today. We are going to read from chapter 1, section 2. Some people might ask, why are we not doing chapter 1, section 1, the principles of miracles? For a few reasons, but my intention is that we will get to all those principles of miracles, but we will sprinkle them in throughout the early chapters rather than spending one session just reading the principles. And this way we can tie the principles to the reading and it gives us some context. So we're not skipping the principles. They are very helpful. We're just spreading them out over time, and you will see how we do that in just a moment. So there's a couple concepts. Remember, this is like the introduction, or the introductory chapter to A Course in Miracles. And there are a couple concepts right away that we will cover today that are very lofty. So we're going to cover miracles and their relationship to your actions. We're going to cover what I will label soul communications, but what the Course calls communications. We're going to also look at this abstract concept of shifting out of time awareness and into soul awareness. We'll talk about revelation and being ready for revelation. And then we'll talk a bit about time and eternity, but there will be so much more to say on all these topics. So you can think of these as just brief intros to those ideas. We will circle back with all of them again. There's more to say than what we will cover today. So I said that we are not going to read the whole section 1, Principle of Miracles, but what I've done is extracted, in this case, 4 principles that I think relate directly to what we will read today, and we will introduce them as we go along, and then we'll spend a few minutes with them at the end and review them again. So that's how we're going to work the principles in. All right, and with that, I want to thank Julie C. from Virginia for being our reader today. Thank you, Julie. Whenever you're ready.
Revelation induces complete but temporary suspension of doubt and fear. It reflects the original form of communication between God and his creations, involving the extremely personal sense of creation, sometimes sought in physical relationships. Physical closeness cannot achieve it. Miracles, however, are genuinely interpersonal and result in true closeness to others. Revelation unites you directly with God. Miracles unite you directly with your brother. Neither emanates from consciousness, but both are experienced there. Consciousness is the state that induces action, though it does not inspire it. You are free to believe what you choose, and what you do attests to what you believe.
So there is a lot in every paragraph. And for those of you that are newer to this, it's not necessary to master each paragraph along the way. So you take in as much as you can. And I can tell you that there are people, so Noelle mentioned a few moments ago, she's been through it 3 or 4 times. I know I have as well. And I keep getting more each time. So allow yourself to view this as a learning journey. You get as much as you're ready for at any one time. So what we learned here,
that doesn't mean I really understand much.
I understand. Well, hopefully we can be helpful with adding to your understanding, Noel. So what we're doing in this section, there's going to be some contrasting of miracles with revelation. For while they work towards the same goal, the process is different. For instance, the experience of revelation, which is unites you directly with God. The experience of revelation temporarily suspends doubt and fear in your mind. Not permanently, but in that moment. For in other words, to say you can't be experiencing revelation while you're fearful. It interferes it. There's a suspension of all doubt and fear so that the channel of revelation to your mind is then open. If fear would interfere with that. Revelation is one of the highest forms of communication mentioned in Course in Miracles. I'll go over several different kinds towards the end tonight. Revelation is certainly one of the highest. It reflects, it's not the same as the original form of communication, but it's a reflection of that communication in time. It reflects the way we all originally communicated with the Creator before time began. And in that process, it's very personal. It's a direct communication from God to you, to your level of understanding. Whereas in contrast, miracles are interpersonal and they result in connecting you to others. Revelation is direct from God to you. Miracles is to you and others. So there's a difference. Now, do they work towards the same goal? Yes, they're both to bring about peace and assurance and love, but they operate differently. Now, if that wasn't enough, we're going to go a little deeper. For those of you that are newer, this might be more than you asked for. Neither revelation nor miracles comes from your consciousness. It doesn't come from there, but it appears in your consciousness. You experience it in your consciousness, but that's not where it came from. So consciousness can be thought of more as what you do to move around in time and space and make decisions and communicate. It's the way you use all day long your mind to interact with the world. It's a state that induces action, behaviors. But your consciousness is not the inspiration for those things. The inspiration comes from elsewhere. And so you might say, well, where does it come from? And we'll get to that in just a minute. So we're going a little bit deeper here. And I'm going to, this would be, well, let's take some comments before we do that. Heather?
I just have a quick question. When it says it reflects the original form of communication between God and his creations, is that referring to what they would call the echo? It's a reflection. It's not a direct voice.
Yes. What is an echo? You can have a boom can go off and it can hit a wall and echo back at you. It's a reflection off the wall. And so echoes for the voice of God are typically, Heather, referred to with returns to the Holy Spirit's echoes.
Okay.
But revelations are direct communications, Heather. An echo is indirect. It comes off of something else.
Yeah.
But a revelation, and we'll contrast this a little more at the end of today. So we'll try to clarify it once again.
Thank you.
A revelation is a direct communication. There are no intermediaries. Heidi?
So does that mean that miracles don't come from God?
Miracles come through Christ and the Holy Spirit.
From where?
From Christ and the Holy Spirit.
So a miracle is from Christ and the Holy Spirit, and a revelation is from God.
Yes, ma'am. Now, I have to understand, Heidi, that a miracle is for the purposes of bringing about healing of a sick mind. God doesn't operate on that plane. He doesn't recognize any sickness. He only recognizes total oneness. And so there are no miracles in heaven, but there are definitely miracles here in time where we need it, where there's a belief in separation and confusion. So miracles are practical and needed here in time. And revelation is the more advanced level of understanding. And then to Heather's point, in heaven, there's the original form of communication. It's not a reflection. It's a direct mind-to-mind communication from creator to all creation.
So how do we know if we received a miracle or a revelation?
So let's say that's a fair question. Let's say that, okay?
Okay.
But let's put hopefully you will have more questions after today than ever. So we're going to put a few of them in the parking lot and get to them as we get into finishing chapter 1 and 2. So what I'm about to show you is not required at this time. It's for those of you who've been around for a while. There are multiple levels of consciousness talked about, multiple levels talked about in A Course in Miracles. The conscious level, this is the one that we are familiar with. A miracle and a revelation do not emanate from consciousness, but that is the level in which you make choices. A revelation emanates from your superconscious level, the domain of the Holy Spirit, from your higher mind. A revelation emanates, and a miracle emanates from the Christ mind, which is more, you can think of it as the deepest level of your subconscious. It's a part of that consciousness that we all share together. It's not your personal subconscious. It's a shared group subconscious. Miracles originate from there. Revelation originates from there, and they appear, they're experienced in your conscious mind. So you didn't need to know that. That was an aside. Let's go on.
Revelation is intensely personal and cannot be meaningfully translated. That is why any attempt to describe it in words is impossible. Revelation induces only experience. Miracles, on the other hand, induce action. They are more useful now because of their interpersonal nature. In this phase of learning, working miracles is important because freedom from fear cannot be thrust upon you. Revelation is literally unspeakable because it is an experience of unspeakable love.
Okay, so this might be one of the most helpful lines about the difference between miracles and revelation. So we said before that revelation is intensely personal. It is so personal that any attempt to explain it to another person usually results in gobbledygook. Like, oh, it was like there was this peace I felt, and there was this light, and I felt so warm, and I just knew I was in the present. It's very hard to communicate because it's so personal. And yet when you're experiencing it, Heidi, you know you are in the presence. Take off your shoes, you're standing in holy ground. You know you're in there, but your ability to relate it to another person is even trying to speak of our dreams is often difficult. Speaking of revelation is much more difficult. So any attempt to describe it in words is impossible. It's intended to be for your experience of God. That's what it's for. Miracles, on the other hand, are intended to be shared. They induce action with others. They are interpersonal. They are for you to be engaged with others. And for that reason, they're more useful now, because working with miracles is important in the stages of freeing our minds from fear and helping others to free their minds from fear. Therefore, this is a course in miracles. It's more important now. And that initial stage of fear, you could say it's in 3 stages. First, the completely fearful mind, then the mind that starts to be free from fear, and then it's the mind that's ready for revelation. Yeah, okay, so let's take some comments. Joy?
I've seen it in the phrase in the course that says performing miracles, and this particular paragraph says working miracles, and I'm a little bit tripped up by those terms. I'm just wondering if you can, maybe describe or help with defining these terms, working miracles and performing miracles.
Yeah, so if we had a cluster of words, Joy, all of which are pointing to the same thing, we could say working miracles, performing miracles, acting upon inspiration for miracles, interpersonal experience, communication, healing, a willingness to be helpful to others. So the form, Joy, is non-specific here. It can take many forms. Sometimes it's as simple as a person drops something and you help them with it. Other times it might be just a reassuring word to a person or no words at all. And then other times it might be a more complete verbal communication. So it has many forms, but it appears interpersonally between individuals. And so we call that an action. Okay.
Very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Julie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, in thinking about things that we learned, over the past year, and I understand that we're starting over. Thinking about how it uses the word induces, and revelation being from the Holy Spirit. So experience here to me would suggest my relationship with the Holy Spirit or Christ or God, meaning it enlivens that connection, and I'm, given energy on that level, and then to go out and take the action of, these relational experiences with others, which are miracles.
Yeah. Yeah, I that's clear. Yes. Jane?
Miracles are what tell us that how we think and how we perceive are incorrect, thus guiding us back to the Holy Spirit so that we will perceive correctly. They don't have anything to do with your behavior. They don't have anything to do with what you do, because the Course isn't about behavior. The miracle guides you because it's coming through that you brought your mind back to the right mind or to the Holy Spirit. So you could have a miracle, but it's coming from the Holy Spirit. You're not doing it. That's behavior. It will come forth from you because it's extending through the Holy Spirit. But it doesn't have anything to do with you having to work on changing your behavior or anything. What it has to do is about changing your mind and seeing the truth rather than seeing the ego's thought system. So that's how I've always thought of it as a miracle, is that miracle is bringing me back to my right mind and telling me that everything that I thought through the ego thought system is not reality. And that really helps me when in knowing how to know if I'm hearing from the ego or from the Holy Spirit. If I'm hearing from the ego, it says, go girl, stay in this world, do everything the world has told you, and you will so be happy. And if I hear that message, I know it's not coming from the Holy Spirit. It is not coming from a miracle. It's coming from our ego thought system, which is our belief system. Thank you.
You go, girl. Thank you, Noelle.
Thank you, Jane. That was great. This definition talks about a miracle being interpersonal with others. What about interpersonal with oneself? How does that fit in?
I like that question. We would call that intrapersonal. And there's that dimension to it as well. Matter of fact, that's more what Jane's comment were emphasizing. So my mind is mistaken and I can be in my room by myself without anybody around, and the Holy Spirit helps to correct my mind. That would be intrapersonal. So there's that dimension to it as well, both intrapersonal and interpersonal. These are not terms that we use very often. As a matter of fact, later on, it talks about replacing those words with intramental and intermental, which maybe are even less commonly used terms, but the idea is between or within intra personal. So yes, there's multiple dimensions going on here, Noelle, and certainly that is one of them.
Thank you.
Okay, so the role of fear will come up in relationship to miracles and in Revelation. Remember, Principle 28, miracles are a way, the way of earning release from fear. A fearful mind needs to be released from that. Miracles are a way of earning release from fear. Whereas revelation requires you already be partially released from fear. And in that moment of experiencing revelation, have no fear, have no doubts. So they progress along the line of movement away from fear. So revelation is towards the end, miracles. Therefore, again, we cannot emphasize it enough, miracles are more useful now because of the amount of fear that exists widespread within our people. And so working miracles is important because freedom from fear has to occur first, and it can't be thrust on you. You have to willingly accept this guidance from the Holy Spirit to correct your mind, you have to be accepting of that guidance. You can't have it forced upon you. Heather?
I love the line that says revelation is unspeakable because it is an experience of unspeakable love. And just reminds me of it when it says, that values are felt and love is a felt experience. It's not something you can really, give a definition to. So it's an unspeakable feeling of love. And that's how we know when we have revelation that there's that experience that comes with it of complete love. It's not the same as when miracles are going on. Not that you can't have love and miracles, but it's a different source.
Yes. Thank you. All right. So speaking about that unspeakable love, so let's spend a moment on this experience of revelation and what is that like? Julie?
Awe should be reserved for revelation, to which it is perfectly and correctly applicable. It is not appropriate for miracles because the state of awe is worshipful, implying that one of a lesser order stands before his creator. You are a perfect creation and should experience awe only in the presence of the creator of perfection. The miracle is therefore a sign of love among equals. Equals should not be in awe of one another because awe implies inequality. It is therefore an inappropriate reaction to me. An elder brother is entitled to respect for his greater experience and obedience for his greater wisdom. He is also entitled to love because he is a brother, and to devotion if he is devoted. It is only my devotion that entitles me to yours. There is nothing about me that you cannot attain. I have nothing that does not come from God. The difference between us now is that I have nothing else. This leaves me in a state which is only potential in you.
Mm-hmm. So this really addresses many of the questions Heidi had when we were in the closing sections of the manual for teachers. In what is our relationship to Christ, and how does that differ from our relationship to God the Father? The Creator is worthy of your love and is awesome in our eyes. We're overwhelmed by the extent of the loving nature of the Creator in a state of respectful honor and awe. But with our brothers, it's a love amongst equals. It has a different quality to it. And with Christ, our relationship with Christ is the one of a brother. Yes, he's an elder brother and is entitled to our respect for his greater experience and greater wisdom and our love because he's a brother, and even to our devotion because of the extent of his devotion to us. But it's not appropriate for us to worship him, to be in awe of him. And this, as many of you know, would not go over well as a message in many other institutions. So an elder or brother who we love and respect and work with, but not one whom we worship like we worship the Father. In fact, he says of himself, there's nothing about me that you cannot attain. And this is, if you really want to be clear of your relationship, this line here is, I think, the most clearly stated. that the only difference, he says, between Christ and you is that Christ has only what comes from God and nothing else. And we have piled on a lot of other stuff that doesn't come from God and gets in the way as an obstacle to our thinking, causes us sometimes to be confused about who we are, what our purpose is, who our brothers are in our relationship. All that interference, those obstacles, that's the only difference between Christ and us, are those obstacles. And even those obstacles are destined to be relinquished and released and gone. So that right now, the perfect state is one in which is potential in you and I, whereas in our elder brother, he's already manifested that because there are no obstacles between him and God. So a couple hands go up. Susie.
Hey, John, I have a question. I don't ever remember this, and I don't think it's addressed. Did Christ ever, or does he, or ever have an ego? Did he have to overcome that, or did he never have that? Because you just said he only has the gifts of God, or whatever you said. So
Yeah, right.
that was never a question in my mind.
Yeah. No, it's a very reasonable question. He right now he no longer has anything, but he doesn't speak a whole lot about his experience here on Earth and what that was like. But what we do know, as he said, the final lesson that I learned was to hear only one voice, the voice of the Holy Spirit. And implied in that is before he learned that lesson, he was hearing two voices. And well, we all know what that's like. So clearly he had an ego. We shouldn't say it was perhaps as troublesome as we think of egos. But nevertheless, yes, he had an ego that he had to overcome. That's what enables him to teach this course, Susie.
Mhm.
Otherwise, he couldn't explain these things if he had not experienced it himself.
Thank you. Helpful.
Noel?
To answer that somewhat from the Bible, he was tempted by the devil for power, for riches, and he overcame that. Get thee behind me, Satan. And also on the cross, he was supposed to have said, why have you forsaken me? And that was like some explain that as a momentary blip, that he lost sight of God's purpose with him. But the other part is that when he says there's nothing about me that you cannot attain, that fulfills what he also said in the Bible, the works that I do, you will do, and better and more. And one way of looking at when he says, I have nothing that does not come from God, I have nothing else, is that he got rid of, however you want to say it, his sense of fear, and as you just said, Jonica, his sense of two voices. He just hears the one, and that in some disciplines they call him the way shower, the teacher, and that's what he's doing here also.
He is indeed. Thank you. All right, more on that in the next paragraph.
No man cometh unto the Father but by me, does not mean that I am in any way separate or different from you, except in time, and time does not really exist. The statement is more meaningful in terms of a vertical than a horizontal axis. You stand below me, and I stand below God. In the process of rising up, I am higher because without me, the distance between God and man would be too great for you to encompass. I bridge the distance as an elder brother to you on the one hand, and as a son of God on the other. My devotion to my brothers has placed me in charge of the sonship, which I render complete because I share it. This may appear to contradict the statement, I and my Father are one, but there are two parts to the statement in recognition that the Father is greater.
Mhm. So in time, is there a difference between us and Christ?
Time.
Yes, in time, we still have not learned our final lessons. We're still learning forgiveness, learning to overcome fear, learning to let go of judgment, learning to embrace with perfect love everyone. So yes, we've still got some learning to do. Christ has already completed that journey. So in eternity, we would have completed it as well, and there would be no difference between us and Christ. The only difference is in time. And time is not really meaningful, not really significant. It's not a reality. It's a construct, a belief system that we impose on creation, that the ego thrives on that belief. So there is a abstract concept here that we'll spend a moment on. This is, if you get it, this can be very helpful, but I want to be honest that it often takes people quite a while before they really get this shift that we're about to talk about. It's on the horizontal plane, you can think of as time is going on and on and on and on forever on a horizontal plane, and that your journey through time just goes on and on and on and on and on forever. And that's a concept that limits you to and binds you to the dimension of time. There's a way of being released from that concept, and it's in the vertical dimension, up, down now, and these are metaphors, up, down, where we all are on our way up to God, to return to the memory and union with God. And Christ is up above us, having already risen to that height. There's nothing between him and God. He has nothing else except for what comes from God. And we're climbing, if you will, in the vertical dimension towards him. Time has no meaning on the vertical dimension. The only thing that matters is your progress upward towards union with God. So the hours, the months, the years are insignificant. All we care about is the love that you have in your heart and your union with all the people along the way. So it's a shift. And we would say reality more closely resembles the vertical dimension, where time is unimportant and your ascension to love, return to love is what matters. Why is this helpful? Because when you experience a miracle, you enter into that vertical dimension, you move up in your relationship to love and returning to love. And as we know, the miracle doesn't last all day long. All right. We know that it's a temporary thing. And when you shift back in time, you're ahead of where you would have been. You don't come back in your learning journey to where you were before. You move ahead. And so the miracle saves you time. It advances you forward in your learning journey. And that's a miracle. That's what a miracle does. It collapses time. It's a time saver. It's a manipulation of how much time it would take you to learn these things on your own. And it collapses it sometimes to years of learning can be collapsed into one experience. And we have many testimonies in these classes of people who had struggled with a relationship for a decade or more, and all of a sudden within a moment, a single encounter, poof, all the barriers were gone, and the caring and love and compassion for the other had restored. It's a cult. And these are things that would take forever to learn on your own, but with the help of the Holy Spirit, it accelerates your movement through those experiences. Heather, thanks for your patience.
Wow, that makes it so clear. I just now understand when it says in the Course that miracles wait not on time, that they're instant. They're in this moment, because it brings that into the moment so that it transcends time. We don't have to wait this horizontal timeline. It happens immediately because Christ is the intercessor. He makes that happen right in the moment. It brings us right to this moment where it happens in the now. That's unbelievable.
Thank you. So there's a term you must learn to be familiar with called the collapse of time. It's between where you are today and where you will be when you learn your next lesson. And we don't want to take months and months for you to learn your next lesson. We want to do that as fast as soon as possible. And we want to do that for others as well. And this accelerates the rate of healing of a community of people. And that's how the world is transformed, is through the acceleration of healing of many people. Susie?
So I know many people on this call have talked about this, over and over and over again. And it's just what Jane said, I can't do this on my own. So I get a thought in my head from the Holy Spirit. And because I am willing now and always looking to the Holy Spirit for help, I'm aware now that I have this thought. And then, so that could be an intrapersonal moment, but then I take it to the person I might be having an issue with, and it becomes interpersonal, and it completely collapses time, because now I have seen what I thought I saw completely differently. And that is exactly what happens. And for me, it happened today. And it just keeps happening if I am willing. Well, today's lesson, am I willing to, or was it yesterday, to look at things differently? Always. And if I am, I will get it placed in a different thought placed in my mind. And that's it. It's truly the way it works. And it's fascinating because, just again, to piggyback on Jane, I don't make it happen. I'm just willing to listen.
Thank you. Jane?
Yes, and what you said that happened to you today is the holy instant. Miracles bring us into the Holy Spirit because they bring us into the right mind and telling us that everything that we learned isn't right. So once you hear what the voice or the thought, remember the Holy Spirit is the thought, and you listen to that, you automatically extend that miracle wherever it needs to go. And in that, and the healing, that's when we are not in time anymore. The holy instant is not in time, because we see everybody guiltless in the Holy Spirit, in time, excuse me. And that's what our goal is, is to see everybody go guiltless, because we don't realize the guilt that we came in with. It was covered up by the ego. Thank you.
Thank you. Noel?
I hesitate to bring this up because everybody has been saying such wonderful things, but I was uncomfortable reading in the second paragraph, without me, the distance between God and man would be too great for you to encompass. I certainly understand about teacher and being in charge, but that phrase echoed for me Catholicism, where you have to have 1,001 saints to intercede for you, and you're not only low, you're the absolute lowest on the hierarchy of enlightened beings. So I'd like people's comments on that.
So everything you just referred to, you called it Catholicism. We would just say those are ideas from the past that have been taught to many, many people.
Yeah.
And they are past learning. Our path to healing here is our willingness to offer that past learning up to the Holy Spirit and have it replaced by a present understanding that frees us from those limitations. So, Noel, the fundamental healing process of this course is to take the content of our mind that we've learned elsewhere and hand it to the Holy Spirit and say, could you give me something better here? And that's what we're offering you. And that's what's being offered here. And that willingness is what, to give it to the Holy Spirit is what forgiveness is all about. To give it forth to her gladly and willingly, and no law. Now, the ego does not want you to do that. The ego wants you to hang on to that old learning and reinforce all its limitations. But this is how we heal. Jane?
Well, that's exactly right. Forgiveness is what the course is all about, because forgiveness means love. The reality of who God is and the reality of who I am and you are and everyone, because we're in oneness then. But where we are right now, we can't understand that. Don't even really need to understand it, I don't believe. I think what we need to understand is that we're not in the right place now. But we're being led through Jesus and the Holy Spirit for us to understand that we're not in the right place now, but we are really. And we don't even really have to understand that, because the course will guide us through that, realizing, oh yeah, when I took the time to pause and look at what I thought I was seeing, which the course says you're not really seeing it, you're seeing it through your eyes and not the vision of Christ. Well, really, when you think about that, and then you decide that what you're seeing is not correct, and you turn it over to the Holy Spirit, you can't feel anything better than that. That's peace, that's love, that's pure love that's been extended through the Holy Spirit, through God. So, I mean, through God, from God, through the Holy Spirit. So, everything, it's so hard to imagine, but everything that we learned was not correct, because it came through a thought system that we believed was true. And now we're learning that it wasn't true. But it's not going to happen overnight. I'll tell you, I've been in the course for a long time, and I still have to undo That's my motto today. When I wake up in the morning, I ask what I need to undo, and it tells me what I need to undo. The Holy Spirit is a good guy. He doesn't say it in form, but he'll tell you. So anyway, that's what's important to know, is that, like Susie says, the Holy Spirit, we have to go to the Holy Spirit for everything. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all for your sharing. We're going to move on.
Revelations are indirectly inspired by me because I am close to the Holy Spirit and alert to the revelation readiness of my brothers. I can thus bring down to them more than they can draw down to themselves. The Holy Spirit mediates higher to lower communication, keeping the direct channel from God to you open for revelation. Revelation is not reciprocal. It proceeds from God to you, but not from you to God.
So some of you, these little factoids about revelation and miracles may lack context. As we get further along in the course, they may wind up having more meaning. So don't struggle on it if it doesn't impact you as significant at this point. Just know that revelation requires readiness. You have to be your mind has to have released enough from fear that you can temporarily enter into a state where fear and doubt are suspended. If you're totally enslaved for fear, and many of us know what that's like, then that's incompatible with readiness for revelation. And so Christ is alert to your readiness and can help in recognizing that and help you to receive revelation. It's not from Christ. Revelation proceeds directly from God to you. It's not two-way, by the way. It's not prayer. It's not where you're telling God your wish list or your plan or anything like that. It's a one-way communication. So listen. You want to be listening during that time. And later on, we'll start to get a better sense, especially in the summary that we're going to do this evening, a better sense of the difference between the channels. There's the direct channel from God, and then there are other channels. The Holy Spirit has an indirect channel. So now I'm shifting for a minute. I'm not talking about revelation from God now. I'm talking about the Holy Spirit is a mediator from a higher mind into a lower level. It's your current level of understanding. It's a level in which you can heal and escape from the fear that you're in now. It's translated down into a level that a fearful mind can accept, because it's very gentle. So your fearful mind can accept communication from the Holy Spirit without overwhelming you, without precipitating some kind of moment where you're preoccupied with the phenomena. So there are direct channels and indirect channels. The Holy Spirit has an indirect channel. She takes the message from God, from heaven, translates it, and brings it down to a level that your mind can learn from at this time. We'll summarize all this in the end so that hopefully we'll cluster it all together, and that'll be helpful. Heather?
Yeah, I think that this really helps clarify Noel's question, that the word translate means so much better than the word mediate. You know, Christ was seen as the mediator between us and God, that we needed a mediator in the old, the Old Testament versions of things. We needed someone to mediate between us and God because we weren't good enough. This is the translator that translates a language so we can step it down, so we can understand it. There's a very big difference in the feeling of those two words. Where if it's a mediator or a translator, translators to me is a totally neutral word. Mediator has a little charge on it for me still too, because of my background.
Okay. Okay. And many other times it frequently actually is the Holy Spirit as an interpreter. She takes a message from heaven in a heavenly language and interprets it to each person at the level which they can learn from. A true teacher can do that. Let's go on.
The miracle minimizes the need for time. In the longitudinal or horizontal plane, the recognition of the equality of the members of the sonship appears to involve almost endless time. However, the miracle entails a sudden shift from horizontal to vertical perception. This introduces an interval from which the giver and receiver both emerge farther along in time than they would otherwise have been. The miracle thus has the unique property of abolishing time to the extent that it renders the interval of time it spans unnecessary. There is no relationship between the time a miracle takes and the time it covers. The miracle substitutes for learning that might have taken thousands of years. It does so by the underlying recognition of perfect equality of the giver and receiver on which the miracle rests. The miracle shortens time by collapsing it, thus eliminating certain intervals within it. It does this, however, within the larger temporal sequence.
Okay, we said the miracle collapses time, and this is a more detailed explanation of that process. It merits reading multiple times if you want to be able to integrate it in your own concept frame so that you get beyond the words and you get a feeling for what it's like. But suffice it to say that it accelerates your learning, particularly in terms of relationships with people that you thought were guilty and that you decided, I'm never going to speak to them again. Well, how long is it going to take to get rid of all that and free it up to where you see them as your equal? And what the Course does is says it doesn't really take time at all. It takes a willingness to forgive, and forgiveness is found on this vertical axis, not on the time axis. And so those shifts from a preoccupation with time as the central measure of life, which is an ego concept, by the way. Time is the central measure. It shifts your mind out of that to where you're very present in the moment. You're truly alive in that moment. And their learning occurs that's been waiting to occur. Now the moment is right where your mind is open and accepting. You learn what you need to learn, you and the person with you. And when you slide out of that awareness, now you've advanced yourself in terms of forgiveness. It says there's no relationship between the time a miracle takes. It might take a minute, and the time it covers, it might cover years of what would take otherwise to achieve this kind of forgiveness. So here it says might have taken some thousands of years. If we look to, no, I don't want to go there. Suffice it to say, there are many Orthodox teachings that are still being used from thousands of years ago that would still keep us pinned in our mind to concepts that were taught thousands of years ago. So a miracle can help free you from that in very quick period of time. It shortens time by collapsing it. And so here's the way it says it in chapter 2. It's an interval that doesn't fit the normal pattern of time, where the ordinary considerations of time and space do not apply. And the power of this is that Christ is in control of time and space, and that he will arrange both time and space to adjust to your learning. Now, that's a statement that might be a little overwhelming, but suffice it to say, we're not working within the limits, the ordinary ego limitations of time and space. Our brother, our elder brother, and the Holy Spirit transcend those time-space limitations, and that's what enables miracles to happen. Heather, you had your hand up?
Wow, this is blowing my mind. You know, I finally get this piece. The miracle entails a sudden shift from horizontal to vertical. It's the horizontal has the past and the present and the future. And the vertical only has the now. That's where the eternal now is right in that. That's what makes it vertical, is it's in this moment, in the eternal time is now. Everything else on the other two sides of the horizon don't exist. There's only the now. That's why it collapses time, and we're right into the presence of the eternal now. And that's where the power is. It's a power of now. I get that. Finally understand that statement. Wow, wow, wow.
Good, good. And thank you, Heather. And for those others of you that feel like, well, I'm not getting it right now, we're going to visit this time concept many times. This is a transcendent, these concepts transcend the human cognitive framework that exists on our world.
Yep.
These are lessons from heaven reflected down here in a language that we can understand. So it's not necessary to grasp it right away. Be gentle with yourself and be patient. Continue along the way and trust that the Holy Spirit will bring the understanding to you when you're ready. Susie?
So yeah, that's exactly right what Heather said. And that's what I was going to share. So when I'm in a thing with my ego, and my ego is in a thing telling me a story about what's wrong and what's going on, the miracle completely collapses time. So when I experience that thought I'm just talking about, you know, what happened to me today, I was making up all kinds of things about what was wrong with somebody and the situation I was in. And then I just gave my thoughts to the Holy Spirit, right? And I had this, oh. And it was like Heather said, I was completely present in the now. I wasn't in the evidence making of my story, you know, and it was like, oh, has an entirely different way of thinking of it. And that's peaceful and filled with love and forgiveness. I think I'll take that. I think I'll have what she's offering me. But you know what I mean? I mean, completely in the now. And the reason for me it collapses time, well, for all of us, is I'm done with that story now. I am done. I don't have to revisit that story tonight, tomorrow, before I fall asleep, tomorrow night. I'm done with it. I have an answer and I got to share it with another person. And like we say, poof, it's amazing.
Thank you, Susie. All right, so we're going to do then review. Noelle, you had a comment?
Yeah, you've been emphasizing relationships with other people. Would you say something about physical healing of oneself, please?
So I like to postpone that for another time, Noelle. It's a fair question, but in order to keep the focus on time and eternity and and revelation and miracles. So let's put that one in the parking lot. So Heidi, you had a comment or a question. Noel, you did. Hold on to those. I like the question, and it'll come up soon enough. So in terms of what we read tonight, we said that there are a number of principles that may state these ideas in section 1, principles of miracles. Here's one. Miracles, what do? They make minds one in God. They depend on cooperation because the sonship is the sum of all that God created. As a result, miracles reflect the laws of eternity, not the laws of time. And as Heather indicated, this is why we shift to the vertical axis, where the laws of time are irrelevant. And that's where the miracle happens. That's where the healing occurs. And then so it's the laws of eternity are operative there, not of time. Moving on, principle number 28, miracles are necessary here. They are vital here and now because of the role fear has in the general minds of all of us. So miracles help us release from fear, whereas revelations induce a state in your mind that fear has already been resolved. For that moment, there is no fear in one's mind during revelation. So it doesn't mean you've mastered the state yet, but you're able to be completely free while receiving revelation. So number 46, the Holy Spirit, remember we said she mediates higher to lower communications? She's the highest communication medium. Miracle, and we're going to expand on communications in the next slide. Miracles do not involve high to low communication because they are temporary communication devices. They're very time sensitive. Miracles are time sensitive. They're needed in that Christ-directed miracles are needed there and then. When you return to complete, direct, original communication with God, the need for miracles is over. They're devices to help us in our healing in time. They are not devices that are needed in eternal perfection. And finally, again, miracles are needed in time. It's the only device at your immediate disposal. They are natural experiences, miracles are. You're the only device that you can use for controlling time. Revelation transcends time, has nothing to do with time at all. A direct message from God, you can be sure, does not have a time stamp on it. It's not like a newspaper, So a model that we're used to is a newspaper. Last month's newspaper is of no value whatsoever. It has a time stamp and it's all outdated. But a revelation from God is an eternal message. It's timeless. It's useful beyond any measure of time. It has nothing to do with time at all. Okay, so those are a couple principles that apply, and there may be others as well. We're just doing a highlight here. We said that there are multiple forms of communication. So if you're new, this might be deeper than what you were looking for. If you've been around for a while, then this is probably what you're ready for. So I'm going to list out the categories that I put them in are somewhat subjectively things that Jonica thought were convenient categories. These are forms of communication, of relating to others, to be helpful, to be grateful, to be glad and appreciative, to give a blessing and to honor others. You would be familiar with these forms, perhaps: meditation, prayer, thanksgiving, celebration, praise, awe, and worship. It's natural to communicate between the creation and the creator. The Course says there is and has been no separation. What there is a failure in communication. And so these are what we're looking to restore. The Holy Spirit is a communicator, an interpreter, and a teacher. Her voice is indirect. She mediates higher to lower communication of God's voice. She brings God's voice down to the level of a confused mind and helps gently nudge it forward in the right direction so it heals our split mind of the inner conflicts. This we really need. Then there are miracles themselves, and I've decided to group Christ's vision in along with that. They unite you with others by recognizing your love for the other person. This you can think of as coming directly from the mind of Christ through your mind in joint union with the mind of Christ, then communicates that love to another. Then there are the holy instants, which are experiences of perfect soul-to-soul communication. It's beyond the ordinary empty talk that sometimes passes for conversation. It's one soul connected directly to another, doesn't require words. And then we've mentioned tonight revelation, and we said that's a personal experience. It's a direct channel from God. It's one-way communication from God. And it's not the original form of communication, but it reflects in our experience now, the original form of communication. It's something we can have while here. And finally, that we get to the original form of communication, which is one of pure joy and love between the Creator and all of creation. This is timeless and beyond words. This is natural, and it's a sharing of perfect love amongst all beings. And so there's not a separation. What there is a failure to communicate in any and all of the ways cited here. All right, one more thing, not to overwhelm you with ideas, because this topic doesn't end with our session tonight. We're just going to call it time. We're going to put miracles in one column and revelations in another. This is a review. So we did say that miracles do not depend on revelation, but they do induce revelation, because miracles help free you from fear. And for your mind to be ready for revelation, you have to have at least partially freed yourself from fear. So miracles induce revelation. He says you can be quite capable of miracles already, but still too fearful for revelations. So we've emphasized that point a number of times tonight. So we said just a moment ago, a miracle is a temporary communication device, whereas a revelation is a message from eternity. It's not temporary at all. It's from God beyond time. We said that miracles emanate from the Christ mind, which you can think of as the deep and pure levels of your subconscious mind, whereas revelations come from your higher mind. We'll call it your superconscious. A miracle unites souls with each other, whereas a revelation unites, so it's really a restoration of your awareness of being united directly with God, your soul and God's. Miracles are very useful now because we need to bring healing about. Joy, your question was about performing miracles. Bringing healing to other people's lives is the working of a miracle. And that's what we all recognize. That's what's needed here and now. Whereas revelations are beyond, that they speak of something that is existential in nature and unspeakable. Miracles show your love for others who are your equals, whereas in a revelation, it's from the source of all creation, the creator. All is appropriate for revelations, but not for miracles. Christ brings miracles, the Holy Spirit brings revelations. Miracles minimize time by collapsing the time into the vertical dimension, whereas revelation ignores time. It's not related to time in any way whatsoever. So these are just a couple ways in which we can summarize these things. In many ways, this was your introduction to miracles, time, and revelation. All of these topics will be spoken about in more detail later on, particularly miracles, as well as the framework of time shifting from a horizontal time axis into a vertical timeless axis. All this will be brought up again. But we don't want to do too much in one time. We want to digest what, if that was enough for one session. There's always more. We'll do more tomorrow night. We'll do section 1.3 tomorrow. I hope you'll be able to join us for that. Julie, thank you for volunteering to read. Thank you all for participating in this revelation of miracles. Thank you for your comments, and we'll look forward to getting together again. Jane, you had a comment? Go ahead.
I just wanted to know which book you're using for the Course in Miracles for the teaching.
Foundation of Inner Peace version. Is it version? Edition.
The third
3.
copy, the third one.
Third edition. Yes, third edition.
This one. Oh, good.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
The
you.
one with a gold star. Oh, it's the only one I know of that has a star on the front cover.
So yeah, kind of a stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll call it a star, sunburst on the front cover. Yeah.
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 Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. And thank you all. Noel, good to see you. Do you have a final comment, Noel?
Yeah, yes, I just want to clarify. Tomorrow night is Atonement and Miracles. Is that the section?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And it's at 7 p.m. on Monday nights.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Noel.
And thank you for everything. those, the summaries that you put on the screen, is there a way to download those?
Yeah, I have a website, I'll put them on and I'll find some way to make it real easy for everybody to get to that website. I need to work a little of the technology there, but
Right.
thank you for that request and I will make that happen.
Thank you, Jonica.
Thank you,
All right.
Jonica. Good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
Jonica.
Jonica,
Peace
thank
and love.
you, Julie.
Namaste. Namaste,
Namaste.
everyone.
Namaste. See you tomorrow.
Great, see you then.